Evening, it's Jade Simmons back with another edition of the Daily Debrief. I am your one and only truly independent presidential candidate for this year's election, the 2020 election cycle. If you want to find out more about my candidacy and the movement that is Operation Restoration, you're going to go to operationrestoration2020.com. Of course, you're here joining us on Facebook. We're also on Instagram at the same handle. For those of you who have been so curious and so enthusiastic, thank you, first of all, for your enthusiasm. If you're more curious about not just the movement itself, but how to get involved, you're just going to text RESTORE to 33777, and you'll find out more about what we're doing, why we're here, and how you can help. Okay, I want to dive in. I always promise good news first. Why? Because in this season especially, it's good for us to remember that good things are still happening and good people are still behaving beautifully. One of the things that I said at the very beginning of this epidemic was that if we would look closely enough, we would find multiple golden opportunity moments. And one of those moments was for you personally to look at this as a chance to do some purpose-based work. You have more time than you ever thought you'd have anytime soon, and you're having time now to be productive and to be powerfully purposeful. So if there are books that you're supposed to be writing, you've been putting it off, projects you're supposed to be launching, this is a great time to do that. Now, I would hope that while we as individuals are at home looking to be productive, that there are also people outside looking to be innovative in cause to the situation that we're in. So my good news is about just that. There's exciting news coming out of Jamaica. A young man, a University of Technology student named Rayvon Stewart, has created an invention that now is being touted the world over as something that can help us in the fight against the coronavirus. Here is the thing that you need to know. He created this thing 5 years ago. Why did he create it? Because babies were dying in Jamaica, newborn babies. There were 40 infected with an illness, a virus. And he was very curious about what he could do to stop it. It was literally breaking his heart. Listen, we're in a season now where you can use this darkness and decide to be a light in the midst of it all. So here was a young man 5 years ago who saw a need. It touched him personally. He put his brains, his giftings to work, and he created this invention that's based on ultraviolet lights. And basically, he's burning germs. That's the very lay way of talking about it. But when this light at a frequency that is not harmful to humans, but is absolutely deadly to germs and microorganisms, you put this light on doorknobs and handles and it kills the germs. Here's the thing I want you to take with you. He created this 5 years ago. He's been working on it, actually was just in Geneva to receive an award. He was one of the finalists to make it to this last round where they were giving out awards for health innovation. He did not win. All right, there's a lesson in here for you, but I want you to be inspired by this creation because he created something because of one need that he saw 5 years ago. That need that he filled definitely helped in the time that he created it, but look at how many lives it stands to save now. He's now being considered, his innovations are being considered, hopefully by the US as well, in the fight against corona. Here's what I want you to take away. He's a student. I didn't say renowned pathologist, legendary virologist. He's a student at the University of Technology in Jamaica, not a renowned scientist. He saw a need. How many times am I always telling people that if you see a need, you're looking around and there's no other solution presented, stop saying, I wish somebody would do something. I guarantee you, if a need begins to be highlighted on your radar, there's a good chance that you are the somebody that is literally designed, has been put on this earth to do something about it. He saw the need and he filled it. Here's what he didn't do. He didn't say, I'm too young for this. I don't have all my degrees. Who am I? He didn't say that. He just said, I have enough tools in my arsenal to at least give this a second look. And he didn't delay. Here's the key part. Many of us have been sitting on God-given ideas, inventions, cures. Many of you have books in your heart that had they been written by now, people could be blessed by them right now while they are stuck at home during Corona. I'm going to let that sit with you for a little bit. Am I intentionally giving you a guilt trip? Yes, I am. Because I know how we are as humans, especially the ones that are tuned to the sound of my voice. You guys have a gazillion ideas on your head or heart at any moment, but you're sitting on many of them because you have talked yourself out of the possibility that you are the one designed to do something about it right now. So this man, Rayvon Stewart, didn't delay. If you're just joining us, we're talking about good news here. There is innovation afoot right now in this darkness called the COVID-19 era. This young man in Jamaica, a student, has invented a creation, 5 years ago invented it, that is now being considered the world over as a possible solution. Here's the last thing I want you to know. I told you he was a finalist in these Health Innovation Awards. He did not win. We are going to have to rethink how we look at success. It's not always about the win. Be very mindful. You want to hear your leaders of the future talking about victories along the way, not just one win that only benefits them. So this young man, you see where I'm going here? This young man was only a finalist in the competition for health innovation, but it's not the winner who is now being looked at as a solution to one of the world's biggest problems. So that is to encourage all of you who have been sitting on some ideas, some inventions, some businesses, some projects, some books that you need to launch. I beg of you, do it now. Imagine if he'd waited even 2 more years. You say, well, it still would have happened before Corona. It wouldn't have been ready. It wouldn't have been in the running for this one competition. It wouldn't have gotten the profile elevation that it's getting right now because he did it exactly when he was called to do it. People have been asking me, Jade, what are you thinking? It's too late to run for president. No, it's not. Americans, as we see right now, are making tough decisions in 48, 72 hours. They're having to make tough calls. Americans know how to make hard choices. I think that running for president, of course, is important. Of course, people need time to get to know what I believe, to get to know how I view them. It doesn't take you 2 years, and it shouldn't cost $1 billion to do it. We are priding ourselves, Operation Restoration, on being one of the most efficient, least expensive campaigns in the history of our nation. We believe that money that you're seeing gobbled up in media buys, that money that you're seeing gobbled up in rallies and all these things, we believe that money is better served to the American people. So we're excited about not spending $1 trillion to attain power. We want to help Americans restore their own personal power as well. All right, I've got news for you. Gave you good news about innovation. Here's some more good news that's going to come back a little bit later with a twist. Pollution is down. Even if you don't care about climate change, and you should, even if you don't prioritize environmental issues, and you should, you got to celebrate over the fact that because of the shutdown, what we're seeing is a decrease in pollution. We're seeing a decrease in carbon emissions. I'm going to come back to that later because there's an important economics issue that's going on right now that I believe could also be a solution to our environmental issues. News you should know. You may have heard the rumor. It's not a rumor, but you may have heard it in the form of a rumor, or you may have seen some news saying that there was a specific symptom related to COVID having to do with the loss of smell or the loss of taste. Some people have reported, people who've been infected say that they no longer have a sense of smell and a sense of taste. There's a lot of question about what all the symptoms are. If you're wondering why I'm coughing, it's allergies. It's not COVID-19. Just clearing that up there. But what they were concerned about was, are these really and truly symptoms? Some people have no symptoms at all and are still carriers. Others have dreadful symptoms. And most have mild flu-like symptoms. It is not the flu. It's not the same thing. The flu is an endemic. This is a pandemic. Do not allow people to tell you it's the same thing. It's not. But some of the symptoms are presenting like the flu. They did a study in the Netherlands. And so what they did was they have an app app that they've created. And 60% of people who responded, they used this app to say what their symptoms are. 60% of those people are saying that indeed a loss of smell and a loss of taste have been consistent with their symptoms for corona. Does that mean you take that at face value? Well, you store it up here because as you're checking yourself and being mindful of your own health, that's something you want to notice. They're not sure why. It doesn't happen to everyone. It could be related to each person's individual immune system. Why do I bring this up? A lot of the reason that I'm doing the daily debrief is so that we as Americans get used to reasoning where news is concerned. We get used to developing a research-based mindset. Gone are the days where you can afford to allow any leader to be your only source of information. Misinformation is rampant, and because the news media is hurriedly wanting to bring you news, a lot of times it's not the full picture. I dare you to start intaking multiple sources of news from both sides of the aisle. And if you didn't think that news had a side of an aisle, being a little bit naive there, we know that news has its slant and has its angle, for better or for worse. But make sure you're not only getting your news from the source that already thinks like you do, you want to challenge your own way of thinking. I mentioned these new indicators because you need to know the difference between gold standard research, which is where they have time to put people in a room, which you can't do right now with COVID, and they test out different patterns of the illness. They give the illness to some people and some don't have it. They test for these symptoms on one side and not on the other. There hasn't been a lot of time and occasion for that. So instead, what a lot of the news you'll see now is relying on what we call citizen science. Using an app. It's just me saying, hey, this is how I feel. It's not extremely scientific, but it's information. So this information coming out of the Netherlands is based on what we call citizen science, but do take note of it. If you're noticing a loss of smell and taste, that could definitely be an indicator that you might just be carrying COVID. I want to tell you guys about the best compliment I got today. I think it's a wonderful compliment, and I'll tell you about it in just a second. I want to go back and talk a little bit more about healthcare workers because I think you're going to start to see much of our attention shift to them in particular. If you're looking at Italy, if you've been watching Italy, which had really one of the worst cases, we've now surpassed many of the numbers that we've seen that where the virus has hit before us, but Italy is still notoriously one of the worst scenarios. And what they saw was a loss of over 60 healthcare workers during this crisis. Now, we think of medical workers right now as frontline people. You say, why are we using these war analogies? Well, because a lot of what we're seeing happen and play out is similar to what we see in wartime. So it's not an over-exaggeration to understand it in these terms. In Italy, they've lost over 60 healthcare workers. One of the leaders over there said that it's like sending our soldiers to war empty-handed. Empty-handed. You might remember at the beginning of the onset of this epidemic, you saw many brave healthcare workers saying, I'm not going to take a test. I want the test to be saved for the people who really need them. How valiant that sounded a month ago. We know now that was exactly the wrong thing to do. I definitely believe that when we look at pandemic proofing the nation, one of the first people we're going to need to test are our healthcare workers because they're going to have access first and foremost to the people who may be or who are sick. One of the things you'll remember I said on an earlier broadcast, we were looking at the stimulus bill that was about to come out. So we didn't have anything in there that really looked at bonuses for healthcare workers. One of you who is a healthcare worker disagreed. You said, no, we don't do it for money. We do this because we believe in the work we do. I pushed back and said, it's exactly because of that you deserve the reward. The people who are working regardless of the reward always deserve to be rewarded, often first. And now we're seeing this come to play out. You have healthcare workers who are working overtime. They are literally on the front lines. Many have been on the front lines before they had the proper protection. So I think that bonuses are going to come into play for healthcare workers. I was told that our very own president today started talking about healthcare bonuses for healthcare workers. Now, here's the compliment I got. The best compliment I've gotten since I've begun running was, Jade, you are a terrible politician. That's good news to me. Here's why. They said, because we see people saying some of the same things you say a day or two after you say it. They are stealing your ideas. People are watching, they're spying on you. Let me tell you about something. When you are given ideas that you know can be solutions to the world's problems, you do not hoard them. You do not hold them back. Because if your true motive is only to win, well, then I guess you would hoard and hold back. But if your true motive is to serve as a solution to issues that the world is facing, then you're actually going to be able to sleep okay at night if even if you don't win, your solutions are being employed. Your solutions are being employed. So you're not going to see me ever be nervous about that. We, of course, are mindful. We don't release all of the details of our policy and platforms right now on the daily debrief. You'll be able to look over those in detail at a later date. But here's what I want you to think about your own innovations and your own creation. This seems to be a theme, innovation, tonight. Don't be afraid of people stealing your stuff. Because if it was given to you by God, it comes with an anointing that only you can work. I would love, the only reason I'm running is because I would truly love to be the person and believe that I am the person to implement the strategies that I'm offering to you. But at the end of the day, I want the strategies to be implemented no matter what. I don't need credit for them. Be very wary of leaders who are always looking for the credit, always looking for the praise. You want leaders whose nose are to the grindstone and their first and only agenda is to be on mission where the American people are concerned. The other part of that compliment was, you never ask for money. You're such a bad politician. Why aren't you asking for donations every chance you can get on the daily debrief? Politician right now out there asking for money simply to win an election needs to be looked at a little bit with a side eye. Not trying to throw shade here. What I'm saying is, if you're a people first leader, you're understanding that people are doing all they can right now to survive both physically, emotionally, and financially. If you believe in what we're doing at Operation Restoration and you give, man, we are appreciative of that. But the best way that you can help us right now is by sharing this message. If you believe this is the direction that our nation should go in, do that. Donate your share. Donate your share. Like us on all the different pages that we have and let people know that we exist so that when this thing clears, they can look at us and see if I am the type of leader they want in the new era that we are headed into. Do not think that we are going back to our old normal. I rejoice in the fact that we are going to a new normal. The new normal cannot do business as usual. It cannot do politics as usual. So we thank you to those who have been donating monetarily. But the reason we haven't focused on that is because it's not the time to do it. It's just not the time to do it. I think that our time and focus needs to be on serving the American people, period, point blank. And I think that you should be getting a model of how to do things from your leaders. So if we model to you how to serve without every interaction not having to be a transaction, then I believe you're going to become addicted to that type of leadership. And when the time comes, you're going to let people know that we exist. I hope that that sits well with you and those who've been wondering why we aren't pounding the pavement like most politicians do. It's because I'm not a politician. I am a citizen who believes that for such a time as this, I am tossing my hat in the ring because of what I told you at the beginning of this broadcast. I saw a need. I saw an absence of a voice that sounded like what I've been hearing around me. People who were tired of this division, who did not see options on either side of the aisle, were tired of feeling like they were voting for the lesser of two evils and wanted to see a new option. So I entered, and that's why I'm here when a lot of people are dropping out. That's why. Okay, I want to give you some news that I started to give you the other night. We talked about privacy. I'm curious, how much does your privacy matter now? Because it's going to matter very soon. There's been some reports about Zoom. How many of you are using Zoom to either work or to communicate? We know that Zoom definitely reports back to Facebook, or Facebook reports to Zoom. They let each other know about our using habits, our user habits. They get information believe it or not, on the notes that we take, and they use that information for advertising. Does that matter to you? Does it bother you? It might not. But it's something to think about, because I do believe that privacy is going to be a huge issue in our new era. Here's one of the biggest reasons why privacy is going to be important. If you know anyone who has been already wondering how the government is going to track how in the world are we going to know if people are actually free of the illness? How in the world are we going to know if someone's actually healthy or if the virus is laying dormant inside of them? Well, we're going to have to figure that out. Are they going to start requiring a vaccine for that? And how will they know if we have truly recovered? We know that there are cases where people have recovered but have shown up again with the virus at a later date. We know now that on average, a test done in China, that on average you can have traces of the virus that have been in you for 24 days. We've seen one case of almost 37 days where after they have recovered, they still have traces of the virus. Now, what we're finding is that the traces don't necessarily mean that they are still contagious because they're no longer coughing or sneezing. But the truth is we don't know. This is why it's so important that every state strongly adheres to not only loose suggestions and recommendations coming out of the administration, but that we need to seriously all shut down to some degree prioritizes people over business, people over profit, people over politics. You want to look now to see if your leaders are currently making decisions that are based on either re-election or getting elected, or are they truly thinking about what's in the best interest of the American people? If the government decides that less privacy is going to be required, you want to make sure that's because they truly believe it's the healthiest solution and not because it's profitable for some other players behind the scenes. You see, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think that it behooves every American to pay close to every move that's being made and to consider how you will deal with the issues when it comes. All right, I mentioned that the environmental issue was going to come back. I'm going to talk about the airlines for a bit before I give you something powerful before the epidemic hit. Here's why what's going on with the airlines is an absolute opportunity. Listen, as government, when you do things like bailouts, first of all, I want to remind you that the bailout we're seeing to the airline industry is not the first. Does anybody remember the last time we bailed the airline industry out, government-wise? You guessed it, it was during 9/11. Right after that, they also received a pretty hefty government bailout. Why is that important? Well, we want to keep our eyes on industries that don't seem to learn their lesson. To the money that we're giving to big business. I'll say it again. We have an opportunity to intentionally attach some strings to the money that we're giving to big business. I think we should be attaching environmental strings. That since we are giving money to the airlines, they need to be giving back in terms of environmental issues. What I mean by that is, if we're going to give, one of the things we could say is, okay, we are looking for you to have less routes, shorter routes, not as many flights, right? So I know a lot of the catastrophe comes to start making these reductions. And this is, we can do it. We mean that we can. Here's the catch. People are now. So since they're motivated because they've seen that we actually can make hard choices in the name of survival, now we need to make the hard choices in the name of in our next era, in our new era. So I would keep our eyes on our government. I would, especially as president of the United States, that we begin to attach some environmental strings to these companies, corporations that we are bailing out, especially are all overloaded right now. So thank you for hanging in there. Watch the replay when possible, and we look forward to bringing you a less interrupted broadcast in the future. What I was saying is we're ending now on talking about something that's not getting a lot of reporting. So when you look at the effects of pregnancy, I know some of you who are watching just had a little one. Some of you are currently pregnant during the age of Corona, and a lot but because we're trying to either beat the peak of an illness and make sure that the pregnant woman is giving birth at a time where there is the least possibility for infection. That's something that we're going to have to give some thought to. The other issue is also related to women, and I think it is something we need already be thinking, what's our answer to this? Because we haven't seen these numbers yet. And that's the issue of the other silent epidemic. Forced into containing these spouses that